who say they don't know how they would cope without the hospice. I should just warn you that while speaking to one of the mums, Lana, her daughter Rain suffered a seizure. We've decided to include a few seconds of that moment in our report tonight at Lana's request. You may find it upsetting, but we feel that it shows the realities of life for countless families and the reason that hospices like Zoe's Place are so vital. Michelle, thank you for inviting us in to the hospice. Tell me about Zoe's Place.
So, yeah, Zoe's Place is a fantastic place. What we do is specialise in babies and young children. What we really specialise in is respite care for our families. So what we provide is a break for families. So the majority of our children get around 2 nights per month to stay with us. And the families have all got children with complex care needs and life-limiting illnesses. So they're able to come here. Obviously, it's a process of trust. They get to know us. They get to know all the members of staff, and then the children stay for a couple of nights with us. And it gives the family a break. Yeah. Having a child with complex care needs can be quite exhausting. You know, it's 24 hours a day, basically 7 days a week. So this gives the family time to have a break, you know, do things that we all take for granted. So you often say to families, you know, what are you going to do on your break? And they say, you know, I'm going to have a bath, or I'm going to have a good night's sleep. You know, it is things that we all take for granted. So we also pride ourselves in looking after the whole family, because having a child with complex care needs not only affects the child, it is the whole family.
We've kindly agreed to give us a little tour. Should we go and have a look at some of the facilities? You can talk us through what goes on here. So, you provide a lot of services.
We do.
In this space.
We do.
Talk to me about some of the specialist care, because that's why people come here. They come here for support, but also specialist care, because these children have specific needs.
They do, and we have. We pride ourselves in having. There's always a few nurses on site. This is the main area of the hospice. The kitchen area. We usually have around 2 qualified nurses on shift, but then we have healthcare assistants as well who are very qualified. They're all specially trained to look after each individual child. So the child has always got one-to-one care, you know, always got someone looking after them, which is what really reassures the families, really.
Well, let's have a little look at an area of the hospice that is the kids' favourite bit. And this is where, you know, the money goes. It's on the children and enhancing their day-to-day lives. So where are we now?
So this is the main area of the hospice. So, this is where all the fun happens. I think we've got Jude having a little book now. So he's having a little reading time. So Jude comes to us as well for some education hours as well.
Because you've built a school for him, because he's not well enough to go to school. So you've built a school out in the garden for him.
Yeah. So that was a little Santa's grotto a few years ago, and it wasn't being used. So Jude, because of the episodes he has, unfortunately, it wouldn't be safe for him to go to school. So we kind of had to think outside the box, because we didn't want him to miss out on his education, really. So he comes to us for a few education hours, and our play specialist is also a trained teacher, so we do a lot of sensory activities with him, and he's really come on loads since he started.
I was going to say, what kind of difference does that make to his little life, just to be able to have that sense of normality at a school day or a school couple of hours?
Yeah, and his family are so grateful. His mum got a little school uniform made for him and everything, so it's just amazing to be able to provide them kind of facilities for the families.
Lana, it's so lovely to meet you and baby Rain, nearly 2. When did you first discover Zoe's Place? Why did you need to come here?
A physiotherapist actually recommended Zoe's Place to us. She could see I had my hands full at home, so she wanted me to come in just to get to know the feels of the place and to take a little bit off my shoulders on its own.
When you talk about the load on your shoulders, tell me about that load. Tell me about baby Rain, who's just waken up.
Yeah.
Right on cue.
No. I've got 2 other children as well, so At home, it is quite busy because they're all under 5. And then Rain's everyday needs are a lot in itself. She has epilepsy. She could develop scoliosis, so there's a lot of keeping on top of that. She's got involuntary movements, so a lot of the time when she's hitting herself in the face, she's not very happy. And then her feeding's been up and down, and she can catch anything, really. She's got a really low immune system on top of that. And every day is our little battle because her expectancy, her life expectancy, is up to the age of 5.
So what does a place like this, Zoe's place, mean to you and your family?
It's like a community in itself. It's like a home away from home. At first, you're very sceptic of someone looking after your little girl, especially when they've got so many needs, because you begin to think, right, it's up to me now to keep them going. But when you walk through Zoe's place doors, they're smiley, they're welcoming, and they don't treat you as if, whoa, we've got all this to do for a little girl. They know what to do, they're experienced. So when we walk in, the first thing we're offered is just love. And then we've got so much support on respite. Some parents, when we come in, we feel like we've dropped the kids off and our energy's so low. We've lack of sleep. We're not the cleanest because we've been around the clock looking after them, that we forget about ourselves. So then when we collect them, even just a day after, after a full night's sleep and nice bath, we can parent better. We can live better. We're in the moment more instead of just trying to get through the day.
Well, Lana, thank you so much for speaking to us. Rain is waking up again right on cue.
You say hi.
Hello.
Hiya, Baba.
You're in your favourite place.
Yeah.
And what will she do here today? Lana, what would a typical day look like?
Oh, she'll probably go play in the sensory room. I am going to alert you. She is having a seizure.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Okay. I'm just going to put her in recovery for you on the floor. Yeah.
So, what is the sort of prognosis for the coming months and years in terms of what you will have to deal with day to day? Because obviously you took that seizure in your stride.
Yeah.
You're used to it.
She'll get worse. Her seizures will get worse. That'll be what eventually it'll probably take her. Or she'll get pneumonia. She won't be able to fight it off. And that'll be what takes her from us. But we do have some little Fox G1 children out there who have lived past the age of 5.
Yeah.
And they're still dealing with their seizures every day, still getting sick.
Graham, you and Claire went through IVF to get Evie. It was a 5-year journey.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Evie's diagnosis and what that did to you as a family.
It was just daunting, wasn't it? It was kind of, we still don't know now because it's that rare, and it's been one of them, hasn't it? It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but we're kind of just got to deal with it, haven't we? And take every day. Yeah. Where are you going?
And that's what the parents here at Zoe's place do, right? Every day as it comes.
Yeah.
You just get on with it, you deal with it.
Different.
Talk to me about how Zoe's place makes a difference to your life, Claire, because you've actually called it a lifeline.
It is a lifeline. Originally, when we got offered it, we were like, no, we don't need it, we're fine, we'll just plod on, we can cope. But then we got shown here. As soon as we went in, it just felt like a family, and Evie absolutely loved it, and that's all that matters to us. And so we just decided that it was the right place, and when she is here, it means that we can either have a day or a night without Evie, and we know that she's cared for and well looked after, and she absolutely loves the activities that they provide here.
Day to day, what are Evie's needs? Can you give us a snapshot of what you as parents have to deal with, and you know how Zoe's place helped? Because just before we started talking, Evie was a little bit unwell, and you took it in your stride. You said, "Oh, this happens 3-4 times a day," but Evie
It's a regular occurrence,
It's a
isn't
regular
it?
thing. So as soon as she gets up in the morning, you've got to make sure that if she needs a neb, you give her a nebulizer machine. You need to make sure she's got rid of the rubbish off her chest first thing in the morning, otherwise she'll bring her meds back. Then you give her loads of meds. Then you give her a milk. Then you can't really put her down because then she'll get rid of her milk and meds. And then obviously because she's wriggly right now, but she can't move.
She's keen to show off her hoodie. That's what it is. Her Zoe's Place hoodie. She's very proud.
She is proud of
Wave
it.
the flag for the hospice.
Indeed, yeah. But she's just, she just needs everything doing for herself. She can't do anything for herself. It's 24/7 care. You can't really leave her on her own. You need eyes on her at all times. Even at home, we've got cameras on her to make sure that we've not missed a seizure or missed any little attack or anything. It's just an appointments galore. It's just full on.
Yeah.
Evie's been doing her bit, which I'm very impressed by. Evie, top fundraiser for Zoe's Place. Tell me a little bit about what she's been doing, because I've had a look at the photos and it's put the fun into fundraising.
Yeah.
She's a trooper. Graham has adapted her little Land Rover Discovery car.
Which is bright pink.
It is bright pink, and it's got a personalised little number plate on the front. So that's been adapted, and whenever she can, she's doing laps around our holiday caravan park in North Wales. At the moment, she's up to 98 laps currently, and we're going to do more. We've done different fundraising events, and we've just got various people involved. We've got a local coffee shop involved. They've been stitching little wind spinners, and we've decorated the park.
Little bears as well.
Little bears,
haven't they?
Zoe's, yeah. We've just anything we can. We're just throwing ourselves into it, and we're focusing on it and doing everything we can.
I think the national picture was something like £130 million is needed for hospices, and around 25 million of that comes from government funding. The rest is from charity shops, fundraising events for places like Zoe's Place. There has been an incredible outpouring of support from the Liverpool area, from the local community and further afield. Talk to me about what's happened over the last few weeks, because it's been incredible.
It really has. Yeah, it's astonishing. You know, I knew that Liverpool, you know, we always pull together. We always do. It's you know, it's like no other city in the world, I don't think. I'm very proud to be from Liverpool.
Well, let's get a sense of the financial pressure that hospices in England are under right now. NHS funding, £25 million a year on average, accounts for approximately 16% of hospices' budgets. Integrated Care Board funding represents around 11%. The rest, as I mentioned there, comes from charitable donations. Children's palliative care charity Together for Short Lives says a lack of long-term sustainable funding, coupled with increasing costs, means more than half of children's hospices ended last year with a financial deficit. And without government funding, 82% would have have to cut or stop providing respite care. 70% would cut or stop providing emotional and psychological support. And most worryingly, 45% would have to cut the end-of-life care they provide. And it's not just children's hospices. Hospice UK says 1 in 5 of all hospices are cutting services, with soaring numbers of patients being pushed back into the NHS. Well, I'm joined now by Nick Carroll, the Chief Executive of Together for Short Lives, the children's palliative care charity, and the Chief Executive of Forget Me Not Children's Hospice in West Yorkshire, Gareth Pearce. Both are with us in the studio tonight. Thank you for coming in to discuss this crisis. There's no other word for it. And first of all, I just want to thank everyone at Zoe's Place for opening their doors to us to show us exactly what they do and why it's so vital, and congratulations to them from being pulled back from the brink, Nick, because that's exactly what has happened. Zoe's Place being the first to put their hands up in this current crisis and say we might have to close our doors. Not every hospice might be as lucky as Zoe's Place.
No, and that's the sad thing. We're facing something of a perfect storm at the moment. You've got a situation where The amount of seriously ill children has been growing. It's trebled in the last 20 years, and therefore the demands on children's hospices are even greater. Now, the cost to run that care at a children's hospice has increased 16% in the last 2 years. That's energy bills, that's workforce, and that's before you even add in the new national insurance rises as well. So you've got the cost base rising, but when you look at state funding, that hasn't matched it. At the moment, you could look at local NHS funding, and that's actually declined by 31% in the last 2 years. So you've got a real problem for children's hospices at the moment, and they're actually, right at this moment, many of them are looking at what services they have to cut. And as you said, over half of them are actually operating at a loss at the moment, and we predict that could be as much as 3/4 by the end of this year. So the challenge right now, we really need NHS England and the government to come together. First, they need to commit to the 25 million that's needed next year, but we need a multi-year agreement. It needs to be more than 1 year. We can't live hand to mouth. And they need to make sure it's ring-fenced, and every year it increases with inflation.
Gareth, some big numbers there, some big gaps in funding, some big pressure. You're a hospice operating in that environment. What is that like?
We face an impossible situation. As Nick described there, the numbers just don't add up. We need to generate £6 million this year at Forget-Me-Not, and that's just to keep the lights on, keep the doors open and keep doing the work that we do year in, year out to support families in West Yorkshire. For us, our position is that only around 12% of that number this year will come from statutory funding. And of that 12%, 10% of it is that Children's Hospice grant. So I don't need to explain that if that grant wasn't there next year and if it didn't continue into the future, it would be pretty catastrophic in terms of the services that we're able to deliver locally in West Yorkshire. Day in, day out, we're seeing families come to our door in the worst possible times, absolutely on their knees in terms of what they need and the help that we need to provide them. And we make a promise to walk that journey with that family. And for us, to think that we might not be able to deliver that promise in the future is just heartbreaking. But that's what we face.
Lana, one of the mums who was in that report there, mum of baby Rain, said she didn't know what she would do if that hospice wasn't there. She said there are families that wouldn't survive if Zoe's place wasn't there. And part of me thought, well, there'll be other hospices, won't there? And she said, not in this area. I don't drive. There would be nowhere else for me to go. So just to put it in stark terms, because I think to underline this crisis, we need to hear it in the most starkest of terms. If a hospice shuts its doors, what happens to those families?
I think a large proportion of those families would probably go unsupported. They may be able to access other services in different parts of the system within the NHS and the wider health system, who are already stretched and already facing pressure. So I think the reality is that there is nobody that is able to provide that support to families in the way that a children's hospice does. And that is the reality. And you're absolutely right. Those families come to us day in, day out, and we hear those same comments as we just heard from Zoe's place, with families telling us they literally don't know what they would do and they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us.
And children's hospices, Zoe's place is one of only, I think, 3 hospices in the country offering that kind of care. And people forget that so many hospices can't care for babies because it is so specialised, and they're the scariest of times. A young parent with a baby with specialist, complicated needs have nowhere to go is a really dark place. Dozens of MPs have signed an open letter to the Care Minister, Stephen Kinnock, calling for emergency funding to cope with what's described as unsustainable costs next year. We've spoken about that. Nick, you are heading to the Houses of Parliament tomorrow to take this to the heart of government, to show MPs exactly how you're struggling. You're both heading there tomorrow. Can you tell me a bit about what you'll be saying to them? Because there does seem to be a sense that there is something afoot within the government. They get that this is a crisis, and we may hear something before next year about how they can help.
I think so. I think what we'll be pressing tomorrow is that actually children and families and the hospices can't wait. So we'll be meeting with MPs and we'll be meeting with peers, and we'll have family representatives as well. And we'll be talking about the real urgency now, the fact that the hospices are actually sitting there. They're planning their budgets for next year and they're saying, do we stop respite? Do we stop counselling? do we stop end of life? And as we saw in that data at the start of the piece, by the end of this year, if that funding isn't confirmed, we could be looking at 3/4 of children's hospices running at a deficit. That's running at a loss. And hospices generally have 6 to 12 months of reserves. And when they're gone, that's it. The hospices will be closing down.
And we saw there in my report from Liverpool, when we talk about fundraising, it literally is buckets of 5p's and 2p's on the floor of a hospice and them being counted up. That's the reality of fundraising for hospice care. Gareth, what do you think the government can do? There's talk about a direct funding pot, extra funding pot for hospices. There's talk about a special allocation for NHS funding. There's talk about an exemption from those budget measures announced that will come into force in April next year, the increased national insurance contribution and minimum wage rise. What do you think can be done? What's an easy win for government to give you to help?
I think they need to commit to the funding that's already been discussed, so the £25 million Children's Hospice grant, but the reality is that is not enough. That funding has been static for a number of years, and with inflation as it has been and costs rising at a vast rate of knots, we need to see a long-term, sustainable funding model, not just for children's hospices, but for all hospices across the country, and it needs to be just that. It needs to be long-term, it needs to be sustainable, and it needs to go up over time. You know, every single year, I have to look at a budget and try and make it work based on 90% of my funding being unpredictable and perhaps not there the following year. That's not any way to run a charity, let alone a big organisation. And that's what we have to do every single year. So I think, you know, they need to commit to something, they need to commit to a long-term solution, and the funding needs to go up. Without that long-term sustainable funding, we will see many more hospices like the one that you just shown with the video that you've just been playing.
OK, Gareth and Nick, thank you. Gareth Pearce, the CEO of Forget Me Not Children's Hospice in West Yorkshire, and Nick Carroll, CEO of Together for Short Lies. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Let us know how you get on. We'll continue to follow this crisis. It's so important to those families and the local communities. Thank you for speaking again.
Thank you.
Well, we did ask the Care Minister, Stephen Kinnock, to join us on the programme this evening. Instead of doing that, we were sent a short statement which says this government has inherited huge challenges in the hospice sector. We are determined to shift more healthcare out of hospitals and into the community to ensure patients and their families receive personalised care in the most appropriate setting. And hospices will have a big role to play in that shift. As I said, to be continued. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, why the Archbishop of Canterbury is facing growing calls to resign. Former soldier Daniel Khalife has pled guilty to escaping from prison under a delivery truck. We'll have the latest on that court case. And remembering the fallen 106 years on since the end of World War I, the country falls silent on Armistice Day.
What's it like doing this kind of stuff when he's not here?
Yeah, I miss him. He just inspired me to be a better person. He's shown us what living looks like in the toughest and most difficult of circumstances.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over. People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks. I've reported from around the world and around the UK. It isn't what politicians see from election battle buses, but what ordinary people see from the buses that shape the timetable of their lives.
I feel like there's no trust between the people and the politicians.
Labour's going to get in definitely, and they're no better than the Conservatives.
It is almost impossible to predict where these fires will go next. Ida has certainly left its mark on New Orleans.
It just feels heartbreaking.
Cartels in Mexico are flooding America with the drug. We are standing on the supply line right into the heart of America's opioid crisis. This gives you an idea of the strength of those winds, strong enough to bend and twist metal. Sky News, the full story first. Christchurch has been changed forever by what happened here.
There was a river of blood coming out of the mosque. That's a scene that you don't forget.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
very good morning to you all. Morning.
Do you regret the tweet, Gary?
There's no sign, publicly at least, of either side being willing to give ground. Brianna's dad told Sky News what he thinks of them.
If I'm honest, I hate them. They're just evil. They'll always be monsters.
Free wherever you get your news. How do you reassure the public that all of these mistakes wouldn't be made again?
God forbid we should have to do this again.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The Archbishop of Canterbury has been told to resign after a damning report found that he failed to act over the abuse of boys and young men by a Church of England volunteer. Justin Welby has apologised for what he has called his profound failures, but said he would not step down. However, the Bishop of Newcastle said today the Archbishop's position is untenable. Sky's Lisa Holland has this report.
It's actually not corrupt.
As leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby has presided over state occasions for over a decade. But with the Church in crisis, from grassroots clergy to bishops, there are calls for him to go.
Right, so what we got here then?
Stephen Kurt is the vicar of Christ Church in New Malden in South London. Like many others, he says the Church is in danger of losing all credibility on safeguarding and is at a crossroads.
We need nothing less than a whole-scale change in the culture of the Church of England. Almost every part of the culture of the Church of England has blood on its hands when it comes to safeguarding, but specifically, Justin Welby now needs to resign.
The horrific and sustained abuse of children by this man, John Smythe, has triggered the crisis. A report last week found Justin Welby failed to take the allegations seriously enough, and had he done so, Smythe may have been brought to justice.
For example,
the Bishop of Newcastle, Helen Ann Hartley, has described Justin Welby's position as untenable. And in an extraordinary move, senior figures within the Church's ruling body have launched an online petition calling on Justin Welby to step down.
It's not just about Justin for me, actually. There are other bishops who are named in this report as well, and there are other senior members of the clergy. And I think they also need to resign, because Justin needs to go in order to set the tone for that to happen.
In a statement, Lambeth Palace said the Archbishop reiterates his horror at the scale of John Smythe's egregious abuse. He has apologised profoundly both for his own failures and omissions and for the wickedness, concealment and abuse by the Church more widely. However, there's no sign yet of any of the pressure impacting the Archbishop of Canterbury's position. He has again insisted he will not resign. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Former soldier Daniel Khalife has pleaded guilty to escaping from prison last year. The 23-year-old changed his plea midway through his trial to admit escaping from Wandsworth Jail by strapping himself to the bottom of a delivery lorry. He continues to deny all other charges, including spying for Iran. Sky's Shimon Freeman-Powell has more.
Well, Daniel Khalife had initially told jurors that he would be pleading not guilty to all 4 charges against him. But earlier today at Woolwich Crown Court, the judge gave Khalife an opportunity to re-enter his plea. This is because, whilst given evidence during this trial, Khalife had all but admitted to escaping Wandsworth Prison, which of course then led to that nationwide manhunt. He also gave reasons for doing so, explaining that whilst at Wandsworth he was being held at a vulnerable prisoners unit, saying that he was surrounded by sex offenders, and claims that he was also warned that had he been moved to a main wing, he could be targeted by terrorists. So Khalife's argument was that the reason he'd escaped Wandsworth was knowing that he would be re-detained and hoping that he would be detained at Belmarsh Prison, which is a maximum security prison, claiming he thought that he would be safer there. Today, though, the judge explained to Khalife that under the eyes of the law, this was not a defence and gave him the opportunity to re-enter the plea. It was at this point that he told jurors, "I am guilty." But despite being convicted of this charge, the other 3 charges against him are still ongoing, and this trial will continue as you say, Daniel Khalife denies all those 3 charges, which are collecting and communicating information which could be useful to an enemy state, and in this case, the state of Iran. He's also accused of collecting names of special forces soldiers that would be useful for terrorism, and the 3rd count of perpetrating a bomb hoax at his former army barracks. Now, Daniel Khalife denies the 3 charges against him, and the trial here at Woolwich Crown Court will continue.
Still to come on the UK Tonight, Gary Lineker set to leave Match of the Day at the end of the season. We'll speak to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris. Some breaking news for you this evening. Sky News understands that Gary Lineker is stepping down as presenter of Match of the Day at the end of this season. Now, it's thought the former England striker, who first presented the programme back in 1999, will still present the BBC's coverage of the World Cup in 2026. Well, our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, is here with me. And Rob, I feel like this has been talked about for quite a while because Gary Lineker's garnered quite a controversial reputation at the BBC, shall we say. But still a bit of a surprise it came out today.
Yeah, it's been talked for some time. time about whether he would leave BBC's live coverage after the 2026 Men's World Cup. He is, of course, the BBC's highest earner, despite taking pay cuts over the years, earning over £1 million for presenting Match of the Day and live football coverage as well. But yes, Sky News does understand that this will now be his last season presenting Match of the Day. He will continue until the 2026 World Cup. He's due to do other projects potentially as well going forward, so it might not be the last we've seen on him on the BBC after the World Cup, but having been the heir to Des Lynam and turned a hugely successful playing career into becoming a broadcasting institution, it has been a remarkable stint on air, but not one without controversies.
No, yeah, let's talk about his legacy, shall we? Because 1999, cast your mind way back then when he first started. He had a bit of a rough ride, didn't he? Because essentially, you know, a lot of footballers now go on to be TV pundits and presenters, but at the time he was sort of one of the first to take on such a coveted role. It wasn't all plain sailing. And from then on, over those 20 years, quite a lot's happened.
Yeah, it has. And, you know, the fact is he's managed to keep Match of the Day going.
Yeah.
These are Saturday night highlights that are shown from games that took place hours earlier, as you know, having had a former guise as Saturday night's Premier League highlights presenter here at Sky. And, you know, Match of the Day is still a relevant institution, but it was last year that he was forced off air one weekend when he refused to apologise for his tweets about the then Conservative government's migration policy, and it led to the show being taken off air in terms of having no presenters, no commentators.
New guidelines at the BBC as well about what presenters could and couldn't say on social media.
Yeah, and that's where his social media conduct has run into conflict with a lot of the BBC's other staff. The fact they need to be impartial as news staff. He doesn't see himself as a sort of permanent BBC staff member, not presenting the news, so he can give political views, for instance, and, you know, that has been a source of friction. Another source of more football-related friction over the summer during the Men's Euros, when on his own podcast, he was quite critical of Gareth Southgate's England side using an expletive, and that apparently caused some issues in and around the England team. But it also highlights how Lineker has a new career going forward, which is his own podcasting empire, Goalhanger, which produces so many podcasts beyond sport in history and politics. And he's built up a hugely successful business, which is now going stateside too.
Yeah, well, Gary Lineker has plenty of other sort of fish to fry, as it were, but there'll be a lot of disappointed Match of the Day fans today. Can we talk about another big story today involving a Premier League referee, David Coote? He's been suspended after some video footage emerged of him being I don't know what to say about it, actually. Rude about Jurgen Klopp, I think is putting it mildly.
Very disparaging towards Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. Apparently a video from about 4 years ago, but it's only just been leaked online today, seen now by millions of people, views he never expected to be public, clearly not intended to be heard. We don't normally hear any views from referees, not after matches, not during the season, about their decisions, but certainly it's now led to his suspension, and he was referring in the clip, as you'll hear, to potentially a Liverpool-Burnley match just around the time Liverpool won the title and Jurgen Klopp was Liverpool manager.
What did you think of the Liverpool game earlier when you were fourth official?
Liverpool.
What do you think of Jurgen Klopp?
Absolutely.
Questions of his own judgment. Also, he's been let down by someone who's decided to put this video out in the public domain at a damaging time, because he is still refereeing. He was refereeing Liverpool at the weekend, actually, their victory in their weekend match over Aston Villa, and he is one of the most experienced Premier League referees. He's been at the top of his game, for about 6 years or so, so questions now over his future with this investigation by the PGMOL, which is the Premier League's refereeing body. OK, Rob, thank you. David Coote's suspended. Do we know how long for yet? Pending the outcome of this investigation, and we're yet to hear from him. Yeah, could be a while, but Rob following that story for us. Rob Harris, thank you. Now, it has been a difficult start for the Labour government, with a budget that wasn't exactly as advertised before the general election. The party's plans to rebuild Britain without raising taxes was a point of contention between Sir Keir Starmer and the audience at our election leaders event back in June. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has travelled back to Grimsby, one of our target towns, to see what voters there make of the PM's performance so far.
Grimsby and Cleethorpes on the Humber Estuary, home to Sky News' election target towns, and one of the seats that helped tip the balance for Starmer on the 5th of July. Welcome to Grimsby Town Hall, where we're joined tonight by the two men vying for the keys to Downing Street. Sharon, hi. It's so nice to see you again. Thank you for coming along. So we're back to catch up with some of the voters who put their questions at the Sky News Leaders event. Sharon, Cayman and Amy. A few months in, Keir Starmer's first budget's finally given the contours of Labour's plans, and it's not exactly as advertised before people went to the polls. No tax rises in the next Parliament.
No tax rises needed in the plans in our manifesto.
In the plans.
No tax rises for working people.
Lifelong Labour voter Sharon wanted to know if Starmer really wouldn't put up taxes in order to invest.
How it's all going to be funded? If taxes are not going up, how are you going to fund it?
We need to put money and resource into Grimsby. We need resource decision-making to come.
That was the question, Sharon, wasn't it? How are you going to fund it?
Yeah, absolutely. And following the budget, I actually think I've been indirectly taxed.
I couldn't bring myself to vote for Keir because I was worried that things like this may happen. You know, he wants to bring the growth into the country. How have we done that? By, you know, putting the burden on businesses to grow.
For Cayman, a question foreshadowing the concerns that have plagued the early days of Starmer's premiership.
You seem more like a political robot. Well, for most of...
Has he loosened up a bit since Cayman?
I feel like he's still a robot, yeah.
Still robotic.
Still robotic, yeah.
The jury's still very much out on this new government after a budget that came as a surprise to voters and to the Labour MP who won this seat for Starmer. In the days after the budget, taxes going up for small businesses in Grimsby, were you surprised by it?
I was, which I've been told not to keep saying.
It's been a difficult start for Starmer, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think you'd be, a bit blind to say that you hadn't seen a bit of a rocky start.
A political landslide that stands on shaky ground. Starmer gambling that his big budget will pay off and persuade voters about him and his government. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Great Grimsby.
Sir Keir Starmer marked Armistice Day in Paris today, becoming the first Prime Minister since Churchill to mark the day in France. Here, the nation fell silent at 11 o'clock, exactly 106 years on from the end of the First World War. Laura Bundock reports.
He is the first British Prime Minister to mark Armistice Day in France since Winston Churchill. A poignant show of solidarity, renewing European relations. On this day of customary commemoration and silent remembrance. At the National Memorial Arboretum, the Duchess of Edinburgh stepped in for the King and spoke to the crowds.
They mingle not with their laughing comrades again. They sit no more at familiar tables of home. They have no lot in our labour of the daytime. They sleep beyond England's foam.
We must never forget. It's hard for us to consider what hardship went on in the past.
They left their mothers, their wives, their children for our freedom.
Respect and honour, because we wouldn't be here today, would we, if it wasn't for them.
And here in central London, at the cenotaph, more wreaths laid, some by children, as the loss of youth is taught to a new generation.
Although it's a very long time ago, I think it's still very important for us as a nation and for our allies to remember the events of the First World War, to learn from those events, and above all, to honour the great sacrifice.
It is a scene we know well, but this year perhaps a more pointed meaning to the moment.
This is always a day of great reflection, a reminder of hard-fought freedoms. And with conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, those freedoms feel ever fragile.
It is 110 years since the start of the First World War. Service and sacrifice still remembered through public events and private reflection. Laura Bundock, Sky News in central London.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight, I'll be speaking to the Northern Irish athlete who's just become the fastest park runner in the world. And in sport, Ruben Amorim arrives to start work at Manchester United, but it's bad news for interim head coach Ruud van Nistelrooy.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer, and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
I'm Lisa Dowd, and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place for news.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, I'm going to speak to the Northern Irish athlete who's just run the fastest park run ever. But first, David Garrido is here with the sport. Hello, David.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. A new era in Manchester. Somebody has arrived. Finally, it seems.
Oh, I wonder who. No, it's funny because actually we always knew today was the day. In fact, Ruben Amorim has been sort of talking about this date, and up until this date, 11th of November, he is the sporting club boss in Portugal, in Lisbon, right? And he's been doing a great job there. That's why he's got this job. And now, focused on Manchester United. So, yes, the flight this morning from Beja Airport to Manchester, I'm sure many people were tracking it.
And then like the Santa tracker.
Yeah, exactly. Arrival at Carrington in the afternoon, Manchester United's training ground. He was greeted, he sort of rolled out the red carpet for him. Omar Barada, the CEO, Dan Ashworth, the sporting director, Jason Wilcox, the technical director. You know, this new era with Ineos at the helm, and they've really sort of, you know, top-stacked it, if you like. And he is the latest part of that because, you know, he is very highly rated. There is pressure on him because, you know, Eric Ten Hag, despite winning the League Cup and the FA Cup, couldn't keep his job. Manchester United woefully underperformed in the league, worst Premier League start ever. And they haven't won a league title since 2013. And they probably won't this season because they're so far behind. So it will be at least 2026 before they can, you know, potentially celebrate being champions of England again. So That's one thing, to get them made challenging up with the likes of City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, and to get them back in the Champions League and dining at Europe's top table. And in terms of, you know, his immediate priorities, he's got this international break. It's always a good time to make a change for a football club because you've got a bit of time when you haven't got games. But then when they come back, Ipswich away, Bodo Glimt in the Europa League, Everton away, a relatively gentle start. However, then Arsenal away, Manchester City away and Tottenham away in the League Cup, all in December. You sense that will be a
that's when the honeymoon period is over. Do you know how I knew he'd arrived? Because I got a Sky News alert on my phone that said Ruud van Nistelrooy had left Manchester United, and he'd done really well as interim manager, hadn't he, in that short period?
Unbeaten 4 games, won 3 of them, and it's the big call that's been made. But, you know, he sort of made it known he wanted this job at some point. He's, you know, head coach of PSV, you know, in the last year or so. So he is definitely a head coach at Old Trafford in the future, but they decided to move away from Ruud and all of his, you know, fellow coaching staff, Ruben Amorim, making his stamp on the job pretty much from the get-go. So yes, new era starts at Old Trafford. Plenty more to say in terms of sporting headlines, especially as far as tennis is concerned, and also the England national team.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Amorim, then. We've all been learning about him this week. Some people will have had a genuine knowledge. The rest of us have been catching up fast. We've read about his formation. We've seen his press conferences. He looks a really engaging guy. I mean, if I was a Manchester United fan, I must say I'd be quite excited.
He plays apparently a high-tempo way of playing. He wants to press up the pitch. That's the key. Can he get Manchester United up the pitch? You know, I asked for the stats this morning, and you know, it was sober reading about sort of, you know, how high Manchester United play up the pitch, because when I was thinking about what Amorim needs to do to change the flow of the club, and I haven't got my glasses on, so unfortunately you're going to have to bear with me. But when I looked at the sort of average start distance of the teams up the pitch, Manchester City, as you'd expect, are number 1, Arsenal number 2, Liverpool are number 3, Tottenham number 4, and Brighton are number 5, and Manchester United are down in 10th. So I think if you want to push your defence up the pitch, which is what I think every team looks to do nowadays, he's got to start with that.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Now, a teenager from County Tyrone is celebrating after becoming the Park Run world record holder. Nick Riggs ran the 5K distance in 13 minutes and 44 seconds in Belfast over the weekend, knocking a second off the previous best set by Team GB's Andy Butchart just last year. Well, I spoke to Nick a little earlier and started by asking him if a world record was always the aim.
No, not really, to be perfectly honest. It was kind of not really something I planned for, but, you know, sometimes plans, not everyone goes to plan. So, yeah, it's if something couldn't go to plan, this would be one of the main things that you would think it's good that it didn't go to plan in the end, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Because this started out as just a little Saturday morning trot for you, didn't it, as part of your training?
Yeah, more or less. It was kind of, I think that sums it up perfectly. It was just part of training. We were just doing it as a time trial to get a gauge of kind of where we were at leading into the cross-country season. So, yeah, it wasn't really I wasn't going for a time or targeting a time. So you could say I was kind of just getting out there to run a very hard attempt and, yeah, trying to just focus more on the effort. But yeah, it led to a quick time and a world best. So, yeah, it was some welcome news.
Yeah, you didn't turn up to be a show-off, but you broke a world record for Park Run. How did you find out and what was your reaction?
I did actually know that the world record or world best was 13:45. Year and roughly I was in shape to run that, so it was in the back of my mind kind of going, and I thought, you know what, I think I could give that a crack, but it's not really, I'm not going to be too disappointed, I'm not really going to aim for it. And then it was probably about like literally 15 seconds to go. I looked at my watch and I saw like 13:30 and I thought, oh, I'm about 100 meters away, so I'm literally right on pace to run it. So I put in a bit of a final surge, a bit of a kick over the last 100 meters just so I could dip under it. Yeah, so it was just really about then. 4.9k, I think you could say, is when I kind of knew I was maybe going to run it.
Yeah, what a bit of luck to look at your watch just before the end, because you took a second off the previous world best. And for those who do park run, it is all about personal bests, isn't it? It's billed as a run, not a race. It's you against you, because the whole part of park run is that anyone can take part. You shouldn't really concentrate on your time concentrate on anyone else's time, just your own. So now that you're just concentrating on your time, which is the world's best, are you going to try and beat it next Saturday?
Not next Saturday, no, surprisingly enough. I think I've got a race next Sunday, so yeah, probably it won't be maybe until next year. We'll do another one next year around this time, so hopefully I can maybe go a wee bit quicker this time next year, and if all goes to plan. So look out for that. That might be it might be on news again this time next year, but you never know.
Quick look at the weather now, and the next few days will bring some good sunny spells for many of us, but starry skies overnight will lead to some frost and fog. Mostly dry and clear this evening, but there's a stiff wind down the North Sea, which will bring the odd coastal shower to eastern England. Southeastern English coast will see a few showers tonight. Well, that's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8. Next up, it's The World with Gillian Joseph. We'll see you tomorrow.